Okay, well, thanks, Gerard, and greetings all. Welcome to our Scarborough, where we bring Scarborough leaders together to build relationships with each other and to learn from interesting people and organizations who are doing important work at Scarborough. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. And while we're meeting on a virtual platform, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which we all call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and our responsibility for improving relationships between nations and to improve our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and the unceded territories of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people who call this nation home. Please join me in a moment of reflection, to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we can, in our own way, move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you. Tonight is a special Our Scarborough, not just because we have great speakers who are ideally suited to this month's theme, but because we have a special guest making the introductions tonight, Andrea Hazel. Andrea is likely known to most of you. Andrea has been the president of the Scarborough Business Association for the past 2 years. Andrea enjoyed a 30-year career with Bank of Montreal and now runs her own wealth management business, Winspire Generational Wealth Solutions. Andrea is one of the many inspiring leaders who SCRO gets to work with to build a better Scarborough. And we are grateful at SCRO to benefit from a deep and collaborative working relationship with our friends at the Scarborough Business Association. Andrea, I'll turn it over to you to introduce our first speaker.
Awesome, thank you. And before I do that, I just want to say thank you so much. Like this morning, we were on Scarborough Business Association platform. Mitzi was there, Marg was there, Ashwani was there, Sherry was there. You know, Scarborough is big, but when you really look at your movers and shakers and your supporters, and it becomes so small because you see this family all the time. And you know, SCRO and SBA, you know, thank you on business on one side, citizen on one side. And you know, when it comes down to it, we're all one. We're all in this together. So, you know, thank you for giving me the platform to come on here. I was just at Tropicana doing a grassroots presentations to a lot of grassroots initiatives all across Canada. And this is what I live for. I'm a service person. I'm a service person, hands down. Then everything else will fall together. And so thank you so much. But I want to pipe in a little bit of story here. I'm not going to steal you guys' thunder. I'm going to introduce Leighanne next. But just a little bit of history, right? We're celebrating Black History Month, and thank you for giving us that platform. Just a little bit for those of you who might not know, or you just need to remember, in December of 1995, the House of Commons officially recognized February as Black History Month in Canada, following a motion introduced by the first African-Canadian woman elected to Parliament, the Honorable Jean Augustine. I hope many of you know who she is. The House of Commons carried the motion unanimously. In February of 2008, Senator Donald Oliver, the first Black man appointed to the Senate, introduced the motion to recognize contributions of Black Canadians and February as Black History Month. It received unanimous approval and it was adopted on March 4, 2008. The adoption of this motion completed Canada's parliamentary position on Black History Month. So I want you to know this hasn't been around a long time. And that's why every time it comes around, we need to learn about the amazing history that our Black people has brought to us in Canada and is still doing. So thank you for that. With no further ado, I am bringing on a special young lady. We've had great conversations because I said, if I'm gonna be introducing Leighanne Scarborough teas, okay, woo, 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 I need to know about Leighanne. And just the way she started her business and the inspiration that she has, and the contracts that she's going for. And I said to her, keep going, baby girl, keep going, because you are mighty and you're going to make it. So here's a little bit about Leighanne. So Leighanne Woodstock was born and raised in Scarborough, a married mother of 2 boys, ages 6 and 1, a customer service professional with more than 15 years of customer service experience, and now a new small business owner interested in genealogy. Leighanne has traced her Jamaican family history. Listen to this, guys. To as far back as 1826, Leighanne's business, Scarborough Teas, is on the verge of making it big in Scarborough. But guess what? Do you know how she's gonna make it big? All of us here supporting this young lady to make it with her passion and her vision and her mission statement to support even SHN. Thank you, Leighanne. Take the platform. It's yours right now.
Thank you, Andrea. Good evening, everyone. Grateful to be here. I know a lot of things had to happen behind the scenes and aligned perfectly for me to be here in this moment. So I want to say thank you first to Marge, who reached out to me a couple months ago and invited me here today. And I also want to thank the members of SCRO for having me here today as well. I wanted to start today's kind of talk or presentation with a quote from African-American entrepreneur and philanthropist, Madame C.J. Walker. She is recorded as the first female self-made millionaire in the United States in the Guinness Book of World Records. And she is quoted as saying, "Don't sit and wait for opportunities to come. Get up and make them." So with that being said, this is the main theme of my presentation today, which is initiating opportunities. So that was me. For the past 15 years, I was sitting and waiting for opportunities to come. I'm very proud to work for the company that I do work for. And I just figured, if I kept my head down and worked hard and came to work on time and performed my job really well, someone would take notice and extend a chance to me. I've never been really one to take risks. I'd always just find my groove and stay in my comfort zone and just coast, just doing my job and making sure that what I'm doing well. And although the comfort zone is a really great place to be, it's familiar, it's easy to schedule my life around it, nothing ever grows there. Nothing ever happens there. So in order for me to be able to foster change, I really had to take a leap of faith, take a risk, and start something new. I felt like it was time for me to do something a bit more. Now, during the pandemic, I've been fortunate enough to be considered an essential worker. So I've been able to work remotely, didn't experience any job loss that affected a lot of the Canadians that I spoke with and helped out daily. But I did hear those stories across the country of how the pandemic affected couples, families, their finances, and subsequently their relationships. Listening to their stories had an impact on me. It helped me realize that employment, it can be fleeting, but your bill payments and your mortgage payments, they're still there. So I had to do something, but I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do yet. The idea came to me one night. I was up watching YouTube videos really late and got on the topic of generating multiple streams of income. Myself growing up, my mom always instilled to me the importance of getting an education, starting a career, and saving my money. But having an entrepreneurial spirit and starting my own business was never a part of what I heard growing up. So all of this is a very, very new concept for me. That very night, I decided, you know what, I'm going to start my first business. And the idea was simple. So I thought it was simple. I would design shirts, market them online through social media, and sell them online through an online platform. The main key for me was just to find a niche market that I was passionate about. And for me, that was simple, very easy. It was my community. It was Scarborough. I've lived here for 20 years. And really from that moment, the idea of Scarborough Teas was born. So the very next day, I made sure that, the business name was available. I registered all the social media accounts that I could, Instagram, Facebook, all of that the very next day. Got my business email, bought my domain. Everything was open and available. So I felt like it was almost perfectly aligned. Like this opportunity was meant for me and nobody else. And kind of what the vibe I've been feeling recently is that there's a hum, there's a buzz, there's a vibe in our community. It's becoming more and more evident every single day. We all know how great our community is, despite the negative news reports. But it's now coming to a point where we're letting the rest of the world know how fantastic we are too. Now, Scarborough already boasts plenty of t-shirt brands. I have a few of them in my closet. But my competitors, they can't serve everyone. So I knew that there was room for me in my business to grow and thrive. So in starting Scarborough Teas, I thought about what would make my brand different. I wanted to do more than just have, customers or people just wear my logo on their chest. I really wanted to tap into the Scarborough identity and kind of what makes Scarborough's subculture distinct and unique from Toronto. My first design was pretty simple. It was called Scarborough Street Guide, and it was a list of all the major arterial streets in Scarborough. So Birchmount, Victoria Park, Pharmacy, Warden, etc. And I figured that kind of would start things off. People were familiar with that. And it kind of would jump out at people as unique to Scarborough. During this process, I think one of my favorite points is the creation and collection and designing side. It's allowed me to kind of tap into my artistic side, which I enjoy. I find it's been even some sort of like a therapy during this pandemic time where I've been inside. It's been a great outlet for me. I think one of my favorite collections is the Scarborough Stations collection. It reminded me of when I was commuting downtown and knowing that once you hit Victoria Park Station and leaving the station, you were no longer there. And then on your return commute home, knowing that once you reach Kennedy, you're almost home. My next step, and probably the more challenging, was to let my friends and family know, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is my new venture. How would anyone know about Scarborough Teas if I didn't tell them myself? So there was something scary about it for me, kind of putting myself out there. But I kind of mustered up all the courage that I had. And I made the big announcement on Instagram. So, which is a simple post reading, Scarborough Teas launching soon, October 26, 2021. The caption let everyone know, I had registered a business. I was excited, I was nervous, I was anxious. But kind of like asking for people's support, following my handles, sharing them with other people, and kind of providing me with any feedback they thought that might be valuable to me as a first-time business owner. It was actually finally time for me to use my 25 plus years of customer service experience to good use. It was for my business now. I always felt as though like anyone can start a business, but providing an exceptional customer experience kind of gives you that little bit more of an edge. So I felt as though that was one of my strong suits and I could use that to my advantage when starting up this business. But I learned very quickly that I had a lot to learn because owner and operator was really more than just designing t-shirts and selling them. I had to be, graphic designer, copywriter, social media marketing experts, public relations, and the list just went on and on and on. And everything I did was a learning experience for me. Sorry, I'm just going through my notes here. The brand at the same time, when I first started, it has gone through its growing pains. It first started off as a .com with pricing in US dollars. That was not by choice. So eventually I knew I had to migrate over to a .ca platform with Canadian pricing that would better align with the brand. And really, to do well in an apparel business, I had to accept the idea of embracing changes and kind of taking things as they come along. Really, what would be best for my business is whatever was best for my customers. So building a community and connecting with my customers was, and still is, very much a top priority. I had to communicate with the people that I'm connecting with on a human level. Essentially, I had to show them, like, if you're going to support Scarborough Teas as a small business, you're supporting your next door neighbor's dream. My aim really was to promote an engaged community where everyone that was one of my customers, they shared like a mutual love and passion for Scarborough. That's kind of what I wanted to tap into. It was also really important for me to make sure that what I was doing, which was, the fulfillment and the shipping process, all of that had to happen in Ontario, because from my own experience, I know no one wants to wait too long for an online order. No one wants to pay for duty for items coming in from the United States. So for obvious reasons, majority of my customers would be in my home. I had to make it as Canadian friendly as possible. And the platform had to be easy to use. I didn't have the advantage of a brick and mortar store location, so it had to be something simple and easy to use online. I also had to recognize that people might hesitate purchasing from me. I'm a stranger as far as they know. So I had to kind of put myself out there, really letting people know who I am as a person. And I found that when I did that post, I'd put a picture of my face and I put an intro of myself, who I was, why I was doing this. And I found that my social media community, there was a boost that came. I jumped from 0 to about 485 followers on Instagram in about 4 months. So to me, that was a huge accomplishment. All of that happened organically. I didn't have to pay for followers, but I was paying for advertisement. Now, when it comes to the future of Scarborough Teas, really my focus is community growth and outreach. I would love to see my platform grow to 10,000. And in addition to selling my apparel, I also want to use my platform to highlight and network with other Scarborough-based apparel brands. With a name like Scarborough Teas, you would think that I would just want to be selling my product, but really, I could be tapping into other Scarborough businesses that do clothing similar to myself and saying, hey, here's someone else that does this brand. Let me show you who they are. Kind of using my platform to help boost others. Although, they would be considered technically my competitors, I feel like there's more than enough room in the market for everyone to thrive and to profit. So I want to kind of open that up to everyone. Life is not supposed to be a competition where you have to win. It's not supposed to be a rat race. There's room for everybody. So I'm incredibly grateful for all the opportunities that Scarborough Teas has presented to me so far. And I kind of want to pay that forward to the next apparel brand. 3 years ago, if someone told me I'd be starting a business during a pandemic, I wouldn't believe them. I still find I'm at a loss right now that I'm doing this. So I'm very happy to be here. And the last thing I want to say is that there's a quote that I found shortly before this presentation started. And it was, you're never too young to create an empire, and you're never too old to chase a new dream. So with that, that's the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for listening.
Let's give her a round of applause. Drum roll.
Thank you.
I'm hitting my table. Leighanne, what a journey, what a story. And it's just a short time. Yes. And I could tell you, when you were speaking about how you started and the uphill battle and pain in US and changing your suppliers and starting out from scratch, and you had a vision, and you are speaking right now like a true businesswoman.
Thank you.
So I am here to tell you that it's going to continue to have it leaps and bounds. It's going to continue to have the uphill battles, but you know, I want you to smell the roses all along the way. Okay, stop and smell that roses and say, you know what, this is supposed to happen. I'm gonna get this done. This is what's supposed to happen, and this is my ending story. So thank you so much. We appreciate that. I can hear passion in your voice. So let's give Leighanne another round of applause and wish her all the best in her moving forward. With no further ado, I want to bring you the man of the hour. His name is Gregory Frankson, and Gregory Frankson was born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, by his mother, a Jamaican immigrant who nurtured his love of words from a very young age. He learned to write hip-hop lyrics in Queens, New York, and performed with Juno Award-winning artist Choclair. During his high school years, Greg would go on to become a 2012 Canadian Poetry Slam champion and a CBC Radio 1 poetic commentator under the stage name Retelling. He is the author of 4 trade books, poetry collections, with his award-winning writing widely shared in a variety of audiovisual and published formats on 3 continents. An educator by training and disposition, Greg courageously shares his story in print, sound, and image in the public realm in order to achieve his personal mission to present the vision that inspires others to positively change the world. Like, what more can we ask for in the celebration of our Black History Month in Canada? Greg, you're special, and share that specialty with us today. You can take over the platform, but you are on mute.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much for that introduction, Andrea. I'm always a little bit bashful when I hear people reading versions of my bio, and I'm just like, okay, this is uncomfortable. Can we just get to the good stuff? I just want to say thank you for that. Obviously, I'm very pleased and honored to be here with you all this evening, and particularly pleased that I get an opportunity to talk about one of the things that is most important to me, which is the borough. I tell people all of the time that you may take the boy out of Scarborough, but you can't take Scarborough out the boy, right? And so that is very much who I am. I feel a very deep kinship and affinity to Scarborough. Scarborough is a major piece of who I identify with as a grown man now. Sending respect out to Orton Park, which is where I grew up, and love to Malvern, where I spent my teenage years, and of course, a big thank you to all of you for having me here today. But this session isn't really about me. This session is about the work, and so I'm particularly pleased that we're talking today in the context of what's happening during Black History Month with the very recent release of African Anthology Perspectives of Black Canadian Poets, which is a collection that I edited that contains the words in poetry, in personal essay, in discussion, in short fiction of some of Canada's top spoken word poetry, writing, dub poet folks, like from coast to coast, representing all the way out from the Maritimes, all the way out to the West Coast and everything in between. And on today's session, we've got two of those incredible contributors who are here with me to engage in conversation with y'all. So I have Andrea Thompson and Dwayne Morgan with me. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and give them a nice little round and say thank you, folks, for agreeing to be here with me. So I'm going to pick up my copy of African Anthology and I'm going to read their bios out of the book. I'm sure they're also going to cringe a little bit, but it's what's going to happen. So Andrea Thompson is a poet, novelist, editor, and educator who has been publishing and performing her work for over 25 years. In 2009, she was the Canadian Festival of Spoken Words Poet of Honor, and in 2019, her poetry album, Solarations, earned her the Sherry D. Wilson Golden Beret Award. Thompson is the co-editor of Other Tongues, Mixed Race Women Speak Out, author of the novel Over Our Heads, and the 2021 recipient of the Pavlik Poetry Prize. Her collection, A Selected History of Soul Speak, was published by Frontenac House in 2021 as part of their quartet series. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Andrea Thompson. And also joining myself and Andrea, of course, is the man himself, the legend, Dwayne Morgan. Dwayne is a two-time Canadian National Poetry Slam champion, nicknamed the Godfather of Canadian spoken word by his peers. Morgan has published 13 collections of his work, as well as 9 albums, while performing in 18 countries internationally. Morgan is a 2013 inductee to the Scarborough Walk of Fame, which I'm sure all of you already know, a winner of the Sherry D. Wilson Golden Beret Award, and a finalist for the Premier's Award for Excellence in the Arts. So give it up for Dwayne Morgan. I can also say quite happily that I've known both of these individuals for an extraordinarily long time. Dwayne, a little extraordinarily longer. We've known each other actually since we were teenagers, working in the summer day camp programs through Tropicana Community Services, which is how we first got into contact with each other. Just a quick story. At that time, of course, I was very deeply engaged in my hip hop, and Dwayne was just launching Up From the Roots, his entertainment company that produces When Brothers Speak and When Sisters Speak, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a little bit. But at that time, I can very clearly recall telling Dwayne, this poetry thing, bro, it's kind of a waste of time. Like, what are you doing, man? You need to switch over into the hip hop. Like, I'm having a good time over here. So imagine Dwayne's shock 10 years later when he walked into a poetry show and there I was on stage. So Dwayne, you know, I just have to keep following you around, man. You clearly know what's what. So I just want to say that. And also to emphasize that for folks that Dwayne and I were teammates on that 2012 Slam team that won the championships, representing Up From the Roots. And I think it's important to recognize that that was a very important moment in the history of poetry in this country, because that was a Black-run business that had put a team on that stage that had won a national championship for the very first time. So that was a really powerful and important moment. So thank you, Dwayne, for the power of our friendship. And Andrea has been an unbelievable friend and co-conspirator, supporter. All throughout the years, she has taught me so much with her wisdom and her calm energy, as opposed to the fire that I often bring to almost everything I do. Andrea is very much the still water in all of that. And so, you know, except when she's raging, but that's a whole other story. And so I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to work with both Andrea and Dwayne on this project. This project is a big deal. Us putting this book together and getting it out into the public consciousness is something that took a lot of work, a lot of effort, includes some incredible people. You know, Afua Cooper is in this collection. George Eliot Clark is in this collection. Olive Sr., the current poet laureate of Jamaica, is in this collection. Wade Compton, who's done incredible work on the West Coast. Evelyn C. White, who wrote Alice Walker's biography. She's in this collection. We've got Rodney Saint-Éloi, who's the two-time winner of the Governor General's Literary Award for French language poetry. He's in this collection. Bertrand Bickersteth, who's done incredible work on documenting the history of Black folks on the prairies. He's in this collection. Cicely Bell Blaine, a co-founder of Black Lives Matter Vancouver. They're in this collection. So I could go on and on about the folks that are in here. It's just unbelievable and incredibly, incredibly powerful. And so what I'm going to do is we're just going to have Andrea and Dwayne and I are going to have a free-flowing conversation about the project, about our artistry, about how Scarborough has influenced and helped us to grow and to expand as people, and from that foundation that we have, and just talking about sort of like what's next. So if Dwayne, Andrea, if you folks want to unmute now. For sure. And I just first of all, I just want to give you an opportunity to say hi to everybody before we get into the conversation. So Andrea, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having us here. I'm really excited to be here. It feels like a bit of a homecoming. I grew up around Victoria Park and Shepherd, and went to high school at Sir John A. Macdonald, otherwise known as Mac. I was a Mac girl. So, I moved. I went to school in Ottawa. I moved out west. I lived out there for a long time, and I've been back in Toronto for the last 20 years. So, yeah, it feels really nice to connect again with kind of my home base, hometown, I guess, community. And I'm really happy to be here, really proud of this work that Greg's done. I've known him for a long time and watched him with a lot of awe and respect, seeing the things he's cooked up in the community. So I'm happy to help him celebrate this wonderful book and this great success. It was on the Amazon #1 list, by the way. He's not going to tell you that, but books, he's done a great job with it, promoting it too. So, yeah.
Thanks, Andrea. Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, so good evening to everyone. Some of you I saw in a meeting earlier today. Some of you I chit chat with all the time. So it's great to see some familiar faces on here. I'm not sure yet if this is the moment to speak about stuff that I have going on or if we'll do that later. But lots of stuff going on. I always have my hands in a lot of things that are going on that are very much Scarborough, and some exciting things to tell you all about.
Amazing, yes, and we will get back to the earth-shaking Scarborough-based stuff that you're doing, Dwayne. But let's talk about the book first, and then we'll move more into the artistic endeavors that each of the three of us are engaged in. So, obviously, this book has come out to a lot of fanfare. We've been getting some very solid reviews around what's happened, and I've been out, trumpeting the incredible contributions of folks in the book. So why don't we start there? Why don't each of you just talk a little bit about what you actually contributed to the anthology? Because you both contributed a poem and a personal essay. So why don't we start there? I'll go to Dwayne first, and then I'll go to Andrea. Okay, so go ahead, Dwayne.
So the poem that I wrote really just kind of looked at, being one Black person. And oftentimes, people expect you to represent all Black people when you're just one. And it was just around the importance of, while you have all of this community around you, but still remember that you are an individual. And as an individual, you have your own dreams, goals, responsibilities, etc. So it was really, looking at that, and the fact that oftentimes people want you to represent this much bigger thing. And sometimes you just want to be yourself. Sometimes you just want to be the one person, how you were born to be. And then the essay that I wrote was a reflection on a meeting I had with a granting officer who was giving me some feedback from the people who were on the jury. And I took some issue with some of the feedback because, there's shows that I do when brothers speak, when sisters speak, and they were saying, well, maybe these shows have passed their time. Maybe these kind of shows are no longer necessary, which was interesting because they still happen to be the two biggest spoken word shows in the country. The only issue, presumably, is that they only feature people who identify as Black. So, this idea of, oh, this has passed its time, when there's still so much going on that has to deal with Black people and us trying to find place and be relevant and be listened to and be taken seriously, that I wanted to address, some of the feedback that came my way. So that's what inspired the essay that I contributed to the anthology. Andrea.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, for me, I had some ideas of things that I wanted to talk about at the time. It's been such a interesting time to be a writer, a Black writer, looking at what's been happening in North America over the last couple of years. And so I had some writing, I had some experiences, I had some things that I was reflecting on, and they all kind of came together in the poem, the essay. So the poem I wrote was about, it's called After the Storm, and it was after a snowstorm. I left my house and I saw that somebody had written the N-word on my car in the snow. And it was just kind of like a play-by-play stream of consciousness of what went through my mind when that happened, and my reactions to that. So, I mean, I had written that poem already as a kind of catharsis, because that's what we do when we have all these feelings as writers. We have the blessing of having that outlet to use to process them. So then I wrote the essay, and the essay was kind of a reflecting on my reflection on that experience, and asking a lot of questions, asking questions around civil rights movements, the way civil rights movements have changed from the past in the 60s to today, asking about the relationship between faith and community, between faith and the way that civil rights movements have been approached. So kind of blending those things. And also, as I was writing it, I was talking to Greg. Greg was great. We were kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. And I was like, I don't know about these things I'm saying, Greg, you know me, I don't have a filter. It's like, me be making some people mad. And so then a sub-theme started about the idea of questioning. And that actually kind of became the thesis of the whole essay, is what happens when we ask a lot of questions, and when our nature is to ask a lot of questions. And we're in a time where some questions can feel really triggering. And so that idea of questioning and yeah, that whole thing kind of was woven through. So it was a really cathartic experience for me to get to write this essay and the poem, but the essay specifically because I knew it was for this collection. And I'm really grateful to Greg, because he really gave me permission to go to places where, as I said, it might not have been received as well. Necessarily by somebody who had kind of like an editorial idea of what kind of pieces he wanted, and we had a real leeway. So I love that everybody's kind of writing about what they were passionate about and what they were really feeling in the moment. So yeah, it was my experience.
Yeah, well, definitely. And I think I ended up taking that approach because so much of what happens in the Black community is really, as I write in the introduction, that it's unruly and it's multifaceted. There's so many different things that are going on. And as Dwayne was expressing when he wrote his poem One, we each are one of the multitude, but at the end of the day, you can't get a fulsome understanding of what's happening in the Black community by just going to one person. You need to look at that multitude. You need to look at the community in aggregate to get a sense of what's really going on. And just to share quickly, I also contributed a personal essay to the collection. And the personal essay that I wrote was about my schoolyard experiences being, an 11-year-old kid, 1986 at St. Barbara Catholic School on Jan Ray Drive, right near Lawrence and Scarborough Golf Club Road, behind Golf Road Public School in Tecumseh. So that's where I went to elementary school. And I talked about the green canvas knapsack. Now, if you're of that particular age, you'll remember those knapsacks we used to go to school with, and we used to write all over them and paint the liquid paper on them and all of that kind of stuff, wear it over one shoulder. And so the essay is about what happened when I'm in that schoolyard and people recognize that my name, the name that I was given at birth, Gregory Anthony Frankson, when I write those initials down on the bag, because that's what you had to do, so you knew which of the green bags was yours on a quick glance, GAF, kids figured out what my initials spelled backwards. And so my essay became a riff on the Black community's experience of homosexuality, and particularly how that's been dealt with in Jamaican communities, which of course I am Jamaican descended. And so the essay is the dissertation on that particular topic and the evolution of that conversation. And that's tricky terrain when we're talking about Black folks. It's like calling Black folks out for being homophobic is not a fun thing to do. I'm talking about this in the context of my family. I don't know what they're going to say when they finally read this essay, but you know what? I'm just going to have to take the slings and arrows as they come. And I think that that's part of what it is too. We have to be willing to tell open and honest stories if we're ever going to grow and progress. And so I think that that becomes a big part of what we do. And so that was really the energy that I think we all took into this process, into this project. And I think it's really important that we continue to expand in those ways. So I'll turn to you, Andrea, and I'll ask you, now that you've had some time to sit with your contribution, you've seen how people are starting to respond, like, where do you see this anthology, particularly because you've written your own anthology that talks about many of these issues? This anthology right here, Other Tongues. Where do you think this book fits into that larger national conversation about Blackness in Canada? And where do you see that conversation at this point?
Well, I think, it's reminding me of something we were talking about earlier in the month, this idea of, where are we at nationally as a country around an understanding and a recognition and a willingness to celebrate Black voices. And this also bounces off of Dwayne's comment and his contribution to the collection, is the idea of what does it mean to be Black, and it's something for me when I was growing up. Is one of the things I loved about Scarborough was that, like my ancestry comes from Southern slavery up through the Underground Railroad. So, I knew my folks and my peeps, but then growing up, I got to meet, it was the first time I got to meet people from the Caribbean. Not a lot of people from Africa. I met more people from Africa when I moved out west, actually, but it was the beginning of my kind of getting this idea of this diaspora and what does it mean to be Black. And I think that is, still something, a question that needs to be answered. It's funny because I met somebody at a social event a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about the diversity in the group and where people were from, like different countries that they were from. And they were like, where are you from? And I was like, well, I'm from Toronto, but my ancestry, I would say, is Afro-American. And they were like, oh, so like Jamaican. And I'm like, oh, so like, no, actually, no, it's a whole different thing. But, it just was kind of like, note to self, yeah, I've heard this a lot. And it's, just a need for more understanding, a more nuanced understanding of what it means to be Black in Canada. And I think that that's exactly where this book fits in two specific kind of niches, I think, or public service, public services. One is really expanding on what does it mean to be Black in Canada, and also what were a diverse group of writers, Canadian writers, thinking about at this specific point in time, because I think you can't really separate this collection from the climate that's been going on in the last couple of years. Sorry, long answer, but I'm long-winded.
That's okay. No, it's powerful. I'm sure Dwayne will climb all over that and expand on his thinking as well. So I'll give Dwayne an opportunity to dive in.
Well, I mean, I think, I agree with a lot of the stuff that Andrea was saying. I think for me, it was pretty cool because the country itself is so big that, for Black writers, we don't often know about each other. We know about the Black writers in Toronto, but, for a lot of us, we never really get to see who's writing in the prairies and who's writing, in the Maritimes. And we never even get to go to those places or get invited to a lot of the festivals and that sort of thing. So for me, reading through the anthology and reading about some of people's, experiences and perspectives is a great learning about Canada and about what this country is and what different parts of this country is and how different parts of the country affects how you live and move through life in a Black body. So I think it's very important, even for those of us like myself, who I'm learning a lot about a lot of people who are in the anthology that I had never even heard of before up until this anthology. And now I'm like, oh, now I want to find out more about these people and more about their lives and different things as a result of getting exposed to their experiences and how they see the world based on where in Canada they find themselves.
That's a really smooth segue into like where people find themselves. And so of course, the three of us, our sociocultural context is shaped a lot by our upbringing right here in the East End of Toronto, in the, in what was once the city of Scarborough, will always remain the city of Scarborough to me. And those formative experiences that we had as young people. So I'll kick it back to you again, Dwayne, and I'll come back around to you, Andrea, afterwards. So what was your experience, was your experience of growing up in Scarborough? How does that impact the way you look at the world? And also, how does that influence your artistry?
I always say I had, a pretty normal upbringing. There weren't a whole lot of things that I think, stand out until I started to write and until I started to perform and speak. And when I started to do that, then I realized how unwanted I was. And that's when I realized that I was being tolerated more than I was being accepted. And while that sounds like a negative thing, it may have been, for my personality type, one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, because it just gave me, it's almost a disdain for the establishment. And I set out to create everything on my own, to not ask anybody for anything, to create anything I needed. I was going to create it. I was going to do it. I was not content asking anybody for anything. So, I would go to open mics to perform and nobody wanted me there. Nobody wanted to hear, oh, this rhyming poetry stuff. Oh, here comes the young Black guy with his rhymes and stuff. Nobody was interested. So I had to start my own stuff. I had to start my own business. The goal was never to start my own business. I had to start the business out of necessity because there was no other space. I was unwanted everywhere else. So I had to create my own space and create space for those who were like me. So this disdain that I had from constantly being rejected just spurred me on to just do as many things as I could do and create as many spaces and avenues for as many people as possible. And then, even way back when, with, Andrea was a part of that, when we had to battle places like the League of Poets and stuff to be like, y'all need to let these Black people in, because they didn't want us in there with all this rhyming poetry. And we had to like knock down the doors and be like, no, we deserve to be in here. How we express ourselves, what we write, what we speak about is valid. There's an audience for it. And, you know, we had to come together and be like, no, we are poets. We deserve to be here. So a huge part of my motivation when I was younger to start out all the stuff that I've done was just that so many people didn't want me to be there, that I ensured that I was there, but on my terms, so they could never say anything about it.
Mm.
Andrea.
That's so cool. It's so fun to be here. You know, I've known Dwayne for like 25 years, and I've never heard you speak about that before. It's really cool. It's really good. And way to go. Way to go. Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I think similar to Dwayne, I had this sense of being defined, you know, not so much that people didn't want me to speak. I mean, maybe they didn't and I didn't notice, but I was kind of being like slotted in to certain categories, like, okay, you're this, you know, you're that, you're, you know, especially something that Dwayne was talking about is really a bias in the literary establishment that I've been writing about and trying to grapple with myself for most of my career. The thing that Dwayne was talking about, it was, I was kind of sent out on a mission after a meeting to, you know, when we're talking about the importance of bringing spoken word artists into the league, and I was a staff member at the time, and I approached some artists. Dwayne was one of them, and I said, come on and apply, we need you in this community. And then they were rejected, and it was like a very kind of rude awakening to me. There was that experience. There was a few kind of experiences along the path that made me realize it's really important for people to realize that this kind of exclusionary approach to Can Lit has an undertone of a kind of cultural elitism that might not be intended, but again, is based on just not having a proper understanding. Something that I write about a lot. I've been writing about it academically, writing essays and writing poems. I have a collection that came out recently, and it's really a major theme. It's talking about this, you know, like spoken word poetry as this ocean, and there's all of these different cultural streams, and I've been really interested in the stream that is also my ancestral stream of you know, Black North American literary arts. And when you look at this, like from the Harlem Renaissance through the Black arts movement, there's been a certain aesthetic and there's been a certain politic that if you don't really grapple with that or you understand it, then you know, you might look at what's happening in spoken word poetry and think of it as a kind of substandard type of poetry, which unfortunately has been what has been happening. And that creates this elitism, that creates these experiences where talented artists like Dwayne feel disenchanted and disenfranchised. And this is, you know, I mean, I think as artists, but as human beings, the ability that we have to feel like our voice matters is how much we feel like our existence matters. So creating a context that I've been trying to create a context to educate people about, you know, there is a relationship between culture and, you know, preprint literature and storytelling, and how that affects you know, the kind of non-traditional Eurocentric colonial approach to literature, that if you don't understand that, you're kind of accidentally having an ethnocentrism that results in people being really hurt on a personal level and silenced. So anyways, okay, I'm just going way off because get the hook, stop me, please, back to Greg.
No, you're doing fine, Andrea. I think everybody is understanding and vibing on what you're talking about right now, because I think it's speaking to a greater thing, which is that, you know, traditional Black forms of expression, on the one hand, end up being copied, emulated, and fetishized, you know, and brought into mainstream expression. Like, has anyone listened to pop music lately? Like, I mean, it's it's, you know, it's retooled, watered down milk toast black music. This is what it is, predominantly, right? Oh, sorry, was I not blunt enough? But like, that's essentially what ends up happening. So that's what's happening on the one hand, but on the other hand, the folks who are actually engaged in the creation of these forms end up being marginalized and pushed out because I guess there's a fear that if Black folks are able to be completely comfortable and free to do what they do in these spaces, that they'll just take them over, you know? And so there's that level of anxiety, I think, ultimately about that kind of stuff. So then I think about things like this little book right here is the Man Behind the Mic. This is a 2002 book that Dwayne put out. And yeah, he's like smiling, but yeah, I got a whole bunch of Dwayne's books. I don't have all of them, but I have many of them. And why I like this book in particular is because this book came out just as I was coming into an awareness that hip hop wasn't my space, that spoken word was actually the space where I needed to be. And this Man Behind the Mic was the one who was breaking trail for that. And so, you know, as we talk about, like, Dwayne had to create space through developing up from the roots, and Andrea was involved in creating the space that became the spoken word section of the League of Canadian Poets. You know, you see the Black folks have to put in the heavy work in order to break open the spaces just so they can feel like they can enter them. And it's not even a question of whether they feel like they can be comfortable once they enter those spaces. Mm-hmm. It's just to break down the door, just to physically have the opportunity to enter. And so now that we've entered and we've been in the door and we've been in here for a while, you know, like, Andrea, what do you see as sort of like the current situation now that all that fighting has already been done, and what's the way forward for Black artists, Black poets in this country and their forms of expression?
The way forward. Well, I think, you know, it's just to keep doing what we've been doing and keep speaking out and keep sharing our stories and keep, you know, supporting each other. One of the things that I've noticed about you, Greg, and that we were having a long chat the other day, and I was thanking you for, is the opportunities that you've created for me. You know, you're always supporting other artists and creating opportunities. And, you know, Dwayne has done that too. And I've tried to do that too with my work and mentoring young artists. And I think that that's really important, is creating space for the next generation. You know, I think about this kind of continuum of literary history that we're building on as artists, but we're also, you know, helping that next generation move forward. And I think also there's a level of, I don't know, how do I say this? Of creating or demanding, I guess, accountability. You know, I'm thinking about, we've been through this time where I think about all the Black squares, Black Lives Matter, and, you know, and that was such a traumatic time. It was like all these people of color that I know, all these Black people that I know, is like, we're all playing like, Andrea, this is your life. And all of a sudden I'm doing this, like going over all of the experiences that I've had with racism in my life. And then, you know, and having people who are in my family, who I love, coming up to me and saying, oh, you experienced that? And I'm like, where were you? You've known me for 55 years. You didn't notice, you know? And so anyways, but there were all of these expressions of support that were beautiful and lovely, at the same time frustrating. And now I feel like I really want to hold people to their word. Like, okay, so if you support Black, you know, entrepreneurs, you support Black artists, make this a commitment, like not a seasonal fashionable thing that you did because that was what everybody else was doing. But, you know, this is like, you know, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. It's like a permanent change kind of thing that I think needs to happen. So And, you know, I think that is gonna be part of the work moving forward.
I know Dwayne has lots to say about this kind of thing.
Well, I mean, there's still a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of gatekeepers. There's still a lot of things that are happening. It's still, you know, very difficult to, you know, find funding or things, you know, for your ideas. And, you know, as a community, you know, we've always found a way. But the flip side to that is when you find a way, they always have a way to discredit your way. Right.
Mm.
So it's, you know, if you find a way to get this book out and you find the money and you get it out, then they're going to say, but you published it yourself. So it doesn't really count. So it's still this, you know, gatekeeping of you must do it this way in order for it to matter. And at my stage in life, I no longer ask anyone for permission to exist. If you have a problem here, I am going to create this thing over here, and you're probably going to have a problem with how it ends up unfolding. But this whole idea of you must come, it has to happen through me so that we can say, we helped you to do that.
Mm.
No, thank you. I can do it on my own. You're not going to tag your name onto what it is that I'm doing because you've already rejected the idea and put me in a position where I had to figure it out and figure out how to make it work. So, you know, in that respect, I still have a lot of disdain for the establishment and how, you know, they position certain things and the rules that they put in place, because those rules, you know, when we talk about intersectionality, it involves class, it involves access to resources, it involves so many things that even for the younger artists that I mentor, they have no clue how to go about even getting started on a path to accessing any of these things. So then what happens is that they end up just being silent. We have tons of talented people who aren't working on their art because they can't see a way. So what I do is I find every avenue I can find to make a way, to build a way, to create a way that I can pass on to other people. And, you know, when you spoke about just breaking down the door, you know, my philosophy is, hey, if I even get my foot in the door, all of us are coming through the door. Like, that's just how it's going to work. And there's just going to be an onslaught of Blackness that is coming through the door all at the same time that is just going to be undeniable. And I think that, for me, that just has to be the approach. And it has been my approach, and it has been what has worked for me, and it has put me in a position to mentor and to create opportunity and to give opportunities to a lot of other people who look like me, who have no idea which way to turn to make things happen.
While we're on that topic, why don't we just continue on and talk about what it is that we are doing right now as artists. Dwayne, you're already in the flow. So go ahead and talk about the projects that you're working on right now.
All right. So, well, I just put out my 14th book back in December. That it's called All That Remains, and it's a collection of poems based on the pandemic and things that people have been going through in the pandemic. On Saturday, March 5th, I have my When Sisters Speak spoken word concert that is happening. It's a show that I've produced for over 21 years, creating space for Black female slam poets to get on stage and just talk about whatever their life experiences is. And I've been doing this since before the Me Too movement and all that kind of stuff. I have been here creating space. And I think that is something that is very important. If you haven't been to the Scarborough Town Center this month, I encourage you to get to the Scarborough Town Center. I am part of the curating team for the Scarborough Town Center with the city's Artworks TO program, and the Scarborough Town Center is my canvas, and we are responsible for all of the public art that is in the Scarborough Town Center. So we have a few things that are up right now. One is called Scarborough Heroes, where we've turned Mitzi Hunter into a superhero. With my artist, Joseph Bonsu. We've just given him a number of people, and he turned all of the people, including myself, into superheroes. And all of these superheroes are on display in front of the Shoppers Drug Mart at the mall. Over by the bay, we have something that looks at the fashion of Scarborough. And then upstairs, we have a little store. And in that store, on one side of the store, it's called Scarborough, the backbone slide. And what we wanted to do was imagine if we created a park in Scarborough that was inspired by Maestro Fresh West's song, Let Your Backbone Slide. What would that park look like? So there are 3D renderings and drawings and paintings of us imagining what that park would look like. And then on the other wall, and this one ends at the end of the month, so you kind of have to get there within the next 2 weeks. It's called Scarborough Slang. And it just looks at what are some of the common slang that is being used in Scarborough. And it also has a kiosk. And when you stand in front of the kiosk, you can press on certain words and there's a person who will pop up and will explain to you how you use these Scarborough words and give you examples of using them in a sentence, and then allow you the opportunity to create your own sentence and record yourself using the Scarborough slang. So we also have something called Scarborough Sounds, where we've asked musicians from Scarborough to submit their music to us. And we got the mall to agree that every Friday in the mall, they only play music from Scarborough. So that is something, as people are shopping on Friday, you only hear from Scarborough artists. You can also access that music on Spotify, or if you go into our little store where the art is, you can hear the playlist there. The little store is only open Wednesday to Sunday, 11 to 7. And then next month, as part of that project, we're going to be launching something called, well, we've already launched it, but it's called The Taste of Scarborough. And next month, we're going to launch the Scarborough Food Map. And what this is we had people vote for their favorite restaurants in Scarborough based on what type of food. Based on who won, we had a food photographer work with those restaurants and take a photo of the winning dish. And we are going to create a map of Scarborough, and all of the winning restaurants, their photo is going to be right where they are located in Scarborough, so that people can go out and support these restaurants in Scarborough. So that is what I kind of have going on right now, aside from my own poetry and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm very excited about the work that we're doing and just trying to amplify as much of Scarborough as possible.
Oh, that makes me tired.
Thank you, Dwayne. That's amazing. That's amazing. So Andrea, share with us what you're working on.
Well, I'm working on a gospel album. It's exploring the intersection of Black history and Christianity, and the history of gospel music as well. So I'm working with an amazing musician, collaborator that I've been working with for, I don't know, like 20 years. So that's super fun. That's cooking along. I've been doing a lot of work with mental health, around mental health with people who are dealing with mental health issues. So I've been teaching at CAMH and just started a couple of courses through them, and am in the really, really early stages of working on a collection of multimedia poems that are exploring mental health issues. So I'm kind of in the research phase of that now, but really enjoying kind of brainstorming ways to bring that together, maybe working with, oh, sorry. That's my dad. I don't know how to turn this off. I'll have to let him put it over here. So yeah, so working with art therapists and music therapists to try to combine spoken word and create something that is not only just kind of exploring and hopefully taking the stigma away from mental health issues, but also will be therapeutic because of this multimedia element. I'm thinking about how does sound affect people's state of mind? How does color, how does music affect people's state of mind? So just kind of beginning that now, and still promoting my collection. So I had a collection come out in November called a Selected History of Soul Speak. This is a collection of poetry, and I think a really interesting book because I have like a ton of footnotes at the back, and it's basically, you know, part of this advocacy work where I'm talking a lot about Black history, Black literary history, and really it's like me saying the things to the people who don't understand spoken word in a cultural context with a book. So it talks about my own kind of journey to becoming a spoken word artist, from, you know, feeling disempowered and awkward and shy and silenced, to, you know, learning to kind of find my voice using spoken word as a kind of personal vehicle for activism, but also talking about how the art form really has been that all the way through history. Can I share like a really short bit from the book? It's from the epilogue. Just to kind of give you an idea, is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
We
Go ahead.
we are running down on time, but if
Yeah.
you make it quick,
Okay.
that's amazing, because we want
Keep it
to ask
quick.
you a couple questions. Like, I
Oh,
have a burning
okay.
question for
Yeah,
all
yeah,
three
yeah.
of you.
Okay. Okay, so you know what, maybe I'll skip it. Maybe I'll skip it. I don't want to
Yeah.
take up the time, but yeah, so that's what I'm kind of promoting right now. That's what I'm working on.
Perfect. And, you know, and so for me, of course, I'm continuing to promote this book. We are also conceptualizing a second volume because African Anthology is envisioned as a series of anthologies that look at all aspects of Black Canadian culture. So African Anthology 2 is already in the process, and we will be looking at fiction writers in the next volume. So look out for that. We're starting to make a move around that. And then also using the anthology series as the basis for the launching of a national not-for-profit organization, African Anthology Canada, which will engage itself in the contextualization, the gathering, the sharing, the amplification, and the archiving of these empowered Black Canadian voices for now and for future generations. So that's what I'm working on. And I see that we have a question. I just want to say, just before we take the question, thank you so much to Dwayne and Andrea for coming to participate in this. And yeah, we'll open up the floor. I see Ashwani's got his hand up, so go ahead.
Thank you so much. It's more like a comment. I was listening to Dwayne's, Dwayne, the two words that you used, tolerated and accepted. Those two words, just take a look at it, where they have taken you from one level to the just next level. Those inspiration kind of thing can change anybody and everybody's life. Thank you for sharing that. Those two words means a lot. It can bring a big change in anybody. Thank you for sharing that. I like that, those two words.
You're very welcome.
So what I
Ashwani.
wanted to, oh, thank you so much, Ashwani, for opening the floor with questions. And I'm looking at the time, we've got 2 minutes. I hope you guys are okay to spend maybe another 3 minutes with us, please. I'm asking you 3 more minutes.
Yes, of course.
When I listen to Greg and Andrea and Dwayne, and you guys are so passionate, your inspiration is at your doorstep. And I'm telling you, one thing that I hear, that I pull out of you, is I know that your journey was not easy, okay? And I know in your journey, you haven't worked for no love of the next generation that is coming. You must know that you're paving the way for people like me and a lot of people like me to help the next generation pull themselves up. And so even what you're speaking about today, I was actually applying to the City of Toronto for a grant to support the youths in Scarborough with arts, fashion, and culture. So Dwayne, you said, I was unwanted, I was rejected, I created my own space. And those words resonated with me, and I'm sure a lot of us here, and you know, the tears are just at the back of my eyes, because you've motivated me and to let me know I'm not the only one who's trying to create my own space. Look at Leighanne. Leighanne is trying to create her own space. And you talk about the doorkeepers. My gosh, We've got them left, right, and center, but we're going to continue to push through. My question for three of you, and this is really, really important. I know as a human being, you do get tired sometimes. You do get winded sometimes. You do get frustrated sometimes. What do you look at to keep you moving forward, plowing forward, and continuing to do such great work?
Wayne, do you want to go first?
I mean, oh, Greg, are you gonna go?
No, go Dwayne, you go.
Yeah, you know what? For me, I think I know I've had a very difficult journey, but I know the generation before me had it worse. That's all I need to know. My job is just to make it easier for the generation coming after me. So I don't worry about, oh, woe is me, it's so hard. Other people had it harder than me. I have things at my disposal that other people dreamed of. So my job is to, when the next generation, whatever they imagine, my job is to build it so that when they're ready for it, it's there. So I don't really get too bogged down on, oh, I'm tired. If you're tired, you're probably working hard. That's good.
Thank you. Thank you, Dwayne, for that.
Andrea?
For me, I think I've just always had this sense that this is what I'm supposed to do, you know, like there's certain things, I think, the parts of your character that are non-negotiable. You know, I don't think I decided to be a poet. I think I was born a poet and there was never another path for me. So yeah, I think when I get tired, I usually rest. And, you know, I'm just learning to be respectful of my own rhythms. You know, I went through a phase, this last couple of years, I've been really busy, and I realized when I had a lot on the go, I'd be like, why don't I learn to say no? Why am I doing so many things? Like, this isn't tenable, like this is too much. And then when I had the slow times, I'd be like, oh, well, you're slacking off. Now, come on, chop, 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 chop. So I'm trying to be like, you know, I have good people around me who are kind of reminding me, like, take the rest while you got it. You're going to be busy later. So just kind of being respectful of my own flow and letting myself catch my breath when I need to.
And yeah, I'll just say that, you know what, I'll sleep when I'm dead. So I just have to worry about my life instead, right? So just have to keep going. I've got a personal mission. I don't have a lot of time. I want to build, I want to publish, and I want to leave legacy. And, you know, there's no rest for the wicked, you know what I mean? And I'm wicked and bad. Anyways, Mitzi Hunter, go ahead.
Thanks, everybody. Like, I've had misty eyes throughout your whole talk, and I feel like what you're saying needs to be said. And like, I wish each of you would receive like the Order of Canada or the Order of Ontario, so more people in Canada would really access you. Because sometimes, you know, we have so many people who have the spotlight on repeat and they're not saying anything different. I think everything you guys have said tonight has shared a part of yourself with all of us. And I just really appreciate that. I think the anthology should be audio. I just tried to buy it, which I did, but there wasn't an option for an audio. And imagine all these authors like saying their words. I think that would be really awesome. I do have a really tough question, and it's hard to phrase it because we're out of time, and I'm wondering if SCRO could just give us 15 minutes till like quarter after, because I think what we're talking about here in the context of Scarborough is really important, because you've heard from all these people who grew up in Scarborough and this is how they felt. I feel like I found my tribe because I grew up in Scarborough and I felt the same way. And I'm really trying to say to the room digitally that we are in, that the young people in Scarborough that you see of melanin skin still feel this way. But they are acting it out differently than in my generation and in the ones that I think we're all in the same generation, except for Greg. And I'm really concerned about that. So maybe my question to the panel is, you know, being young and Black in school, in public spaces, like, how do we make it as comfortable as our conversation tonight so they feel that they belong in their uniqueness? Because right now they don't feel that. I can tell you, I was at David and Mary Thompson last night, and there was a young Black man there, almost graduating, and I believe the words that him and his parents shared was that he feels like he's a walking target, not from anything he's done, but just from being, you know, Black.
Well, I mean, I think that's a really powerful way for us to kind of come towards the end here and to bring it all full circle, because ultimately, I mean, this is about our Scarborough, and all of us have experienced our Scarborough in different ways. But I do think, Mitzi, I definitely identify with what you're saying, and I can hear what you're saying. I will also make mention of the fact that Dwayne is an old man, but he's only a couple months older than me. We're the same age. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. Like, I have a 22-year-old daughter. Like, we're the same age. Yeah, I know. Black don't
Let me
crack.
spotlight
But-
you. I know,
But-
I'm not convinced.
Trust me, I'll show you the 75 on my license. But ultimately, you know, when you look around and you see what these kids are experiencing and what they're going through, like, I don't know for Dwayne and Andrea, but I've said this many times. I don't know if I could be a teenager in the internet age. Like, I don't know if I could do that, because you know, we had our rotary dial telephones and the 16-foot long cables that we would take behind a door and stay up till 6 a.m. talking to our friends, you know, but I didn't have to worry about whether I looked like that hot thing on Instagram, and I didn't have to worry about somebody telling the whole world about, you know, things I don't want the whole world to know about, and to have those things not only spread instantaneously to anyone in the world who wants to read it, but for it to then have a record of it online forever. I don't know if I could be a kid in this environment. And I can only imagine how difficult that is, just to be a kid, period. And then you layer Blackness on top of that, and the traditional issues that we have to face as Black people, and the discrimination and the racism and the microaggressions and all of that noise that we have to try to navigate on top of all of that, knowing that there's somebody who's probably recording what we're saying. And if not actually in real time, but then posting about it right after it happens. Like, it's ridiculous. I can't even understand how these kids are surviving. And so how do we help these kids? I think we have to remind them about themselves. We have to keep reminding these kids about themselves, and we have to take the time to do the looking. I feel like a lot of the time we say, we're here for you. Anytime you need us, come see us. But there is a certain level of action that I think we need to take to do the looking, to identify the kids who are in trouble, to identify the kids who are being isolated, to identify the kids who are feeling disempowered or voiceless, and to find ways to, one pebble at a time, build that wall for them that will be that support, that foundation that will allow them to stand tall, allow them to speak up, and allow them to speak out. And I think that that is one of the ways that we can do. And we do this through the artwork that we do, through the organizations that we're part of, through the initiatives that we either lead or participate in. You know, I am leading this initiative, Dwayne's leading his initiative, Andrea's doing her work. We're out there, we're doing our stuff. And so we just have to keep our eyes open, and we have to invite them to come to us and not say that the invitation is open for them to come in. Like, we have to do the outreach instead. I'll stop there and see if Dwayne or Andrea want to toss in on this.
Well, I mean, I do a lot of work in the community. I'm in the schools every week talking to these young people. And I have a teenage daughter who's growing up in this world, and I do my best to keep her busy and to keep her close, but she's not around me all the time. So there's an old poem that I have, and there's one of the lines in it where it says, maybe Biggie Smalls was right, that you are nobody until somebody kills you, because it seems as though we have our young people standing in line waiting for their turn to die, just so that they might be somebody. We have young people that just want to be somebody, that just want to be seen, that just want to matter. There's an African proverb that says, if you don't welcome the children into the village, they will burn it down to feel its warmth. Every time we turn on the news, they're telling us that we are burning down the village because they are not feeling the warmth. This is our responsibility. How do we get them involved in the community, in the things that we are doing? So as much as possible, I try to get young people to, to volunteer, to be around, to do whatever they can, so at least they have some kind of access to somebody who cares. At least they see a pathway for how to get out and still be alive. Because many of them are living in environments that you're not supposed to survive. No one is supposed to survive some of these environments. And they are there almost like experiments to see which one of y'all are going to get out and how are you going to get out. But, when we talk about intersectionality, there are so many intersections involved in all of this. When we look at affordable housing, there are young people who find affordable housing in jail. They know if I'm in jail, I'm going to eat 3 times today. I've done programs with young people and, we buy them pizza, and I've watched young people stuff hot slices of pizza down their sleeves because they didn't know if they're going to have dinner, or they wanted to make sure that their brother or sister was going to eat. So going to jail, it's like, yo, I got 3 meals in here. What do I got to do to get here? So now I go to the jails and talk, and I go to the prison, and I go to the probation places. Going right back to the beginning, I'm just one person. So all of us have to realize we can look at the faces on the news and we can think that this is a Black issue and a Black problem, but this is a societal problem. And eventually it is going to show up on everyone's doorstep who thinks that it's somebody else's issue. And it is going to knock on the door and ask you, what have you done? And we all have to have an answer, because this involves every single one of us. It's only so long that it stays in this neighborhood. But for these kids who have nothing to lose, if they see somebody that they're after, it doesn't matter if they're in a crowded mall. They're doing whatever they got to do in that moment. And any of us or our children or our family could be an innocent bystander at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yep.
So it is all of our responsibility to make sure that we can say, this is what I am doing to save these kids, because they're set up to fail. They are not supposed to survive this. So I feel Mitzi's frustration. I understand the pain even in articulating the question, because I am there in the trenches every day. I see it, I hear it. I've seen things that break my heart every time I have to recount it. But this is the reality that we live in. And a lot of this is in Scarborough.
Unfortunately,
That was powerful. That was so powerful.
very.
Thank you.
Wanted to briefly add something there, Andrea.
Sure, yeah. So for me, I've spent a lot of time working with a lot of different populations. I've been in universities, I've been in grassroots organizations, and I always feel like like my time is best spent when I'm working with people who are disenfranchised and who feel voiceless. And working with people, doing work with people at, through CAMH, or I've done a lot of work with sick kids, working with the kids there who are like eating disorder and substance abuse clinics. And the thing that I keep thinking about is these are the ones who have a safety net. The ones that I'm getting to work with in, even in, like halfway houses or youth organizations, they've been caught. They've been caught already. So I think, it's whatever way that we can to bring youth into community, to connect them to community, is going to be life-saving, really, at the end of the day. And something else, two other things that have been kind of rumbling in my mind as I'm listening to people. One is when I'm teaching, when I'm working with youth, especially, I'm always kind of doing this. I'm always like, spoken word is the essence of who you are, put into words, put out into the world, and focusing on the importance of their individual voice. I think there's so much pressure on young people to be a certain thing. I know I've experienced that myself. It's like, okay, well, this is what it means to be a person of color. This is what it means to be a mixed race person, to be, growing up in the 70s, to be rejected and then be elevated as exotic. I had this feeling of, I feel like a mini skirt. I'm in one day and I'm out the next, but I'm a human being. And my humanity has been completely lost in this because of other people's lens on me and deciding who I am. And I think that's even more so, you're talking about intersectionality, Dwayne, even more so for young women. So this idea of who you are, your humanity, can get kind of stripped away. And when that happens, you lose your soul. You lose that essence of who you are. So I think anything that we can do to encourage young people to be true to who they are, that no, you don't have to be like that hero. You might be somebody who's awkward. For myself, I'm an awkward person. And I try to let that come out when I'm around youth so they can have an understanding that it's okay to be who you are. You can celebrate the uniqueness that is you, and for us to be patient with them. A lot of times I've been working with youth myself, and I felt like like even in my head thought like, I'm not going to get anything out of this kid today. If I'm in a class with 30 kids, I'm like, okay, where does my attention go? And I've had the experience of being schooled on that over and over again, and realizing over doing this for decades that every kid has a story and every kid has something profound to say. And if we create that space and nurture it and wait, and sometimes the waiting is waiting in the face of belligerence, waiting in the face of being insulted, waiting in the face of being tested, and kind of having, people come at you, and people are disenfranchised. They're not charming.
Yeah, I think the worst is waiting and not being seen. I just want to share with this, because I know a lot of the people here. And 30 years ago, I started a small business because you might remember in the 90s, there was a recession. And I couldn't get a job when I was a student at UTSC. So I started a company, and somebody who saw me was Marge Middleton. And she helped me in so many ways as someone who just was trying to make it, and just like Dwayne explained, and it made all the difference. So you each have power and can help someone and make a transformative difference in their lives. So thank you, Marge.
Thank you.
You're on
Thank you
mute,
to-
Mark, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you
And
so much.
that's why I chose Leighanne for a speaker tonight, because I said to Andrea, we have to give people a leg up. We have to help wherever we can.
Yeah.
And today was Good Deed Day, so we did some good deeds today.
Yes, but check out Marg. So she's talking about, we have to help Leighanne, and then Marg is also checking in me. Andrea, your business is new. How are you doing? How are you getting through, right? So despite what's happening with Scarborough, Remember at the beginning, I say everywhere I go, I see the same set of people. We got to spread that love. It's us. It's up to us to keep spreading that love. And we need to go as big and wide as we can. You know, sometimes I throw some curveball at Scarborough Business Association directors and they call me cuckoo. They call me crazy. But eventually they see my vision because we are bigger than Scarborough Business Association. We are Scarborough. We are Scarborough. And I also have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. And I'm afraid for them. I'm very scared. And when they leave from around my surrounding, I pray, because that's the only thing I can do as a parent. You know, I pray. And I wanted to share that I think we're all who have kids, we're all going through that, and we're living in Scarborough. And then we're out here on the flip side saying, Scarborough is a beautiful place. Scarborough is a place to live. We have some of the best artists that comes out of Scarborough. And then we have this disease that wants to cripple us. Well, we can't let it cripple us. I was speaking to an inspector and he said to me, Andrea, we have to move beyond the youth. We have to move into their family situation. Because he said when the shootings happen and the killings happen, it's too late, because when they go to jail, there's another disease in there waiting for them. So bringing them out and transitioning them, they're coming out, love the life in there. As Dwayne said, you get 3 free meals. They do something again to go right back into jail. We've lost them. And I resonate with what he's saying. So Dwayne, you shared the story with the pizza and the child putting it down his sleeve. And that's because of his situation that he has with his parents or the family into that home. So how can we be proactive and reaching those families? Maybe we need to do a town hall meeting, getting parents involved into the neighborhoods that we need to see that change, to see that liveliness coming back. But I could tell you right now, as a nation, we cannot sit down and let this take away our amazing Scarborough story. It is now 8:22. I want to thank every one of you for tuning in. I think Bob hand is up and Greg hand is also up.
Yeah,
I was just going to go and have dinner.
No, you're not allowed to have dinner. Not with that photo at the back.
Me too.
Excellent presentation. This conversation can continue after, obviously, this month, and it is it's, as someone that has been in Scarborough since '82, and I mean in business since '82, like working like the old Howard Johnson days, and I'm now at Centennial, I think most of you know, and I've had my own business as well. And we go back a little bit, Marv, don't we? But it is, Andrea, I think you hit, it's not just about the youth. It's, it's about all of us that live in Scarborough. And as a past, president of the Chamber of Commerce and the Walk of Fame, I'm an advocate for promoting how good Scarborough is. We have such a large, diverse community. Also, we have 600,000 people. There are cities in this country that don't have 600,000 people. And from all levels of government, I'm not putting it on the Mitzi, but from municipal, provincial, and federal, we all got to come together and we've got to integrate all of us as one movement moving forward. And a lot of our Stand Up Scarborough campaign back in the early 90s started that, the Walk of Fame that Marg chairs, SCRO, what they're doing. I mean, the future development of Scarborough it's unbelievable. And Larry, I know I was a part of your group, or I was a guest, I guess, at the, we're moving in the right direction. It's just, we got to be united as one, but it can't be the same faces, Andrea, just like you were saying. Like everybody's got to bring 2. And this, so like this presentation, both of you, like this was unbelievable today. Like just absolutely unbelievable. Kudos. I should have brought in my 105 students to this. And in all honesty, you know, I do a lot. I was on an event yesterday that had 7,000 people, and it was the future of the 7,000. I mean, that's a lot of people
Wow.
online, but it was done by Event MB and people from all over the world. This should be broadcasted all over Scarborough. We've got to get a mission to get this Our Scarborough campaign out. And I did post up the link for Scarborough Teas.
Yes.
Because
Oh,
we're gonna start moving those things. I love entrepreneurs. Anyways, I'm taking too much time. Sorry.
And
I saw
SHN
one of my board of directors are on the chat, and we are revamping our website because we're now hosting the Golden Mile area. And he said, Andrea, we need our swag from Scarborough Teas.
and SHN, if you take photographs of yourself wearing the Love Scarborough and t-shirts, take a photo, send it to SHN. They will post it on their site.
All right.
Amazing. I just wanted to, before everybody leaves for the evening, I just wanted to first of all just acknowledge the amazing power and energy and wisdom that was brought to the table by my co-panelists Dwayne and Andrea. Just wanted to big them up for that. I want to send a shout out to Scarborough Teas. We need to talk, sister. We need to talk. I need to get myself some t-shirts so I can be rocking it while I'm walking around Durham region, when I'm walking around London next week, when I go out, when I go everywhere, I'll be like, yeah, like Maestro said, we all got to put the scar in the burrow, right? So we got to do that. And I also wanted to share with folks that, of course, what we were doing is also talking about our book. So our book is African Anthology, Perspectives of Black Canadian Poets. The book is available in bookstores everywhere, both online and in physical bookstores. If they don't have a copy, make them order it. And I've put in the chat, the link that has all of our stuff, the reviews, how to buy this African Anthology t-shirt, right? So I got a little bit of tea game as well. Our reviews, and of course, our upcoming events, including our launch. Our official launch is next Friday evening. That is being done through a different book list in downtown Toronto. Dwayne and Andrea and myself and a few other artists will be part of that official Toronto launch event. So just go on Eventbrite to a different book list and get yourself booked in for that next Friday, the 25th in the evening. So again, thank you. Thank you to Mark. Thank you to all of you for having us here and for allowing us to present to you this evening.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Larry, you want to do the final goodbye?
Sure, I think I will. Thanks, Andrea and Greg and Dwayne, Leighanne, Andrea. Again, there's a lot of Scarborough passion in the room tonight, and it's really gratifying to see, because I mean, we are gradually starting to knit together this rather understated and latent pride that we have in this place, and in a way that's going to be, I think, quite powerful in the years to come. And it's interesting because I talked to people in other parts of Toronto, and I don't think there's any movement like this in North York. There's no movement like this in Etobicoke or in York or East York. And it's all happening through grassroots volunteers that are just coming together and saying, we want to make a better place. And, SCRO can't do it all by itself. SBA can't do it all by itself. We can never have too many cooks in the kitchen on this. So, I mean, it's great to see so much grassroots, activity on the part of so many organizations in Scarborough that are all working independently or together to create this sense of pride in our community. And SCRO is very happy to do its part on that, including our next Our Scarborough event, which takes place on March the 10th. And our highlight speaker on March 10th is Owen Jones from the Scarborough Underwater Club. I didn't know we had one, but we do, and it's been around for 60 years. Followed by Alicia Vandermeer from Scarborough Health Network Foundation. So just picking up on what we were talking about, where Alicia will be talking about the very ambitious fundraising and advocacy, Mitzi, you'll hear more about this, campaign recently launched by SHN, the Love Scarborough campaign that probably most of you are familiar with, that was publicly launched a few weeks ago, and which you'll see a whole lot more about. So please register at scro.ca/ourscarborough. And while you're there, please take a moment to join SCRO as a member so we can keep in touch with you on a regular basis. So thank you all for coming tonight, and I look forward to seeing you on a computer screen often, soon in person, and hopefully all on March 10th as well.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Love
guys.
everybody. It's all
Thank you.
love.
Yeah, have a good evening.
Bye.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.